Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In case you're new here, hi, I'm Anna and this is Read and Play, the series where I review fantasy books while playing video games. So if you're into that, please consider subscribing. In today's video, I'm bringing you a strange little fantasy book called The Man Who Spoke Snakish from the beautiful lands of Estonia, a country whose existence I almost forgot completely until I found this masterpiece of oddity about talking snakes, flying grandpas, human sacrifice, child-diddling priests, and women fucking bears. Yeah, as wicked as it may sound, this book is actually about the importance of preserving traditions, which is addressed by using elements of medieval Estonian pre-Christian mythology, as well as the 30th century history of Christianity. But before we jump into it, I wanna quickly remind you what Estonia actually is. Estonia is a tiny country of 1.3 million people, somewhere up in the northeast side of Europe, but don't call it Eastern European cause people will get mad at you. It borders the Baltic Sea and Gulf of Finland, and it includes around 1,500 islands. It's a country filled with beautiful historical castles, hilltop fortresses, and bunch of beautiful churches, which is ironic because over 80% of the population don't care about religion. The country is well known for being one of the countries which gained independence from the Soviet Union by singing patriotic songs, also for carrying wives as a sport and having a stunningly beautiful wildlife. Now, there's not much known about authentic pre-Christian Estonian mythology, as it was oral tradition and, the systemic recording of folk heritage only started in the 19th century, but some of its elements managed to survive in historical chronicles and runic songs. So, in this video, I'll analyze the themes and events of The Man Who Spoke Snakish, and I will point out the mythological, historical, and cultural references in it. In the gameplay, I'm continuing to explore the grim world of Dark Souls 3, running around in the Untended graves and going up against champion Gundyr, so stay tuned for an epic episode. And without further ado, let's dissect this novel. The Man Who Spoke Snakish was written by Estonian author, playwright, topical satirist, and screenwriter Andrus Kivirähk. He is considered to be one of the most remarkable current-day prose writers of his country, mainly thanks to his beloved novel Rehepa, which is set in a late 19th century Estonian village, and it ridicules the common notions of Estonian national characteristics and peculiarities. Although he has multiple award-winning works, The Man Who Spoke Snakish is the only one I could find in English, but don't worry, you can find the rest of them in Finnish, French, German, Hungarian, Latvian, and Russian. But what is it actually about? This novel follows the story of a boy named Leemet, who is part of a tribe that lives in the forest of medieval Estonia. Presenting his life from childhood to adulthood, the narrator shows the tragic end of an entire culture. If you're a fan of fast-paced, action-packed novels, I'm looking at you hardcore fans of modern Western fantasy, this book might not be for you because this one is a slow burner. The author likes to take his time introducing you to the world of his story, but don't worry, even though it takes a while to get through the intro, you're not gonna get bored of it. Reading about Leemet's childhood, including his struggles of learning the Snakish language, hanging out with his human and snake friends, the unfortunate end of his parents' marriage, and of course his overall lifestyle in the forest, we get to develop a fondness of this culture, which makes its gradual destruction even more impactful. In the story we can observe the negative effects of the Germanic and Christian influence on Leemet's community, and even though nowadays aspects of Christianity are normalized, the way the narrator presents it in comparison to the forest life, you actually start to realize how odd some of its details are. Now, I have to point out that I've seen the use of Christianity as a symbol of destruction in many cringeworthy fantasy books, which all kind of sounded like the essay of an edgy teenage boy who just discovered r/atheism and suddenly thinks that he is better than everyone else, but luckily that wasn't the case here. Christianity here merely serves as a symbol for foreign influence and modernity. We get to see this as a handful of characters are introduced who live in a Christian village near the forest and idealize German Christians as weeaboos idealize Japan.
I've been really thinking about going to Japan soon. I know how to use chopsticks. I know hiragana.
As opposed to that, we can also see the dangers of hardcore traditionalism, thanks to the few characters who are a bit too attached to the ancient pagan culture that are also willing to commit some heinous crimes for it. Their most important divinities are the sacred springs, which eventually trigger one of the main conflicts of the book. Leemet falls into the middle of these two because although his parents are from the forest, they lived in the village for a while and that is exactly where Leemet was born. So he he is considered to be an outsider by the leaders of both sides. But unlike the traditionalists of the forest who tried to alienate him due to where he was born, the priest of the village actually tries to draw him in and convert him. So throughout the plot we get to see Lamet's conflicting relationship with modernity, as he is both attracted and repelled by various aspects of village life and Christianity. Although getting through this book took me a while, I didn't feel bored at any point. It was exciting to discover this world and saddening to see the slow demise of an entire culture. Despite the fact that it's not as action-packed as most fantasy books are nowadays, the constant and slow build of tension managed to captivate me, so overall the plot deserves a big thumbs up. The most fascinating part of this book is the world building, especially the way the author managed to incorporate elements of medieval Estonian mythology, biblical symbolism, history, and human evolution into it. The book revolves around the conflict between the village and the forest, Christianity and paganism, and of course modernity and traditionalism. Estonian culture, folklore, and mythology are closely tied to nature, which is something we can see in the book on the side of traditionalism. In current-day Estonia, there are around 2,500 sacred natural sites, and the indigenous customs connected to them are still in use. Therefore, sacred groves have a great importance to the national identity and environment of Estonians. With that said, it is unsurprising that the author chose the forest as the main setting of this book, with the sacred spring being the trigger of one of the main conflicts. A big part of this world building is the wildlife and the creatures who live in the forest. Some of these are purely fictional, but some of them can be found in a real-life Estonian forest as well. Snakes, especially Lamet's good friend Ins, are the most noble creatures of the forest. In pre-Christian Estonia, adders were considered good luck charms for households, which is probably why they appear in mythology as protector spirits. Now, in the book, although the inhabitants of the forest hold snakes in high regard, they are heavily villainized by Christians, given the snake's biblical role as the symbol of temptation and of course the origin of sin. The funniest creatures in this world are the bears. In real life, Estonia has the highest brown bear population density in Europe, and bear watching is quite a common hobby. In the book, however, bears are portrayed as horny and tempting creatures which seduce women. They also like to spy on human girls, so that is kind of the opposite of bear watching. The wolf is one of the most popular animals in Estonian folktales, and it is often used as a symbol of wild and untouched nature, which is why it has become the country's national animal in 2018. In the book, wolves are kept as domestic animals, used mostly for their milk and in some cases to fight. So in this context, drinking their milk might serve as a metaphor for being raised in a traditional environment. The central element of the book is Snakish, a language that is used by humans to communicate with most animals and even to command and hunt them. Although most humans used to speak it, their number began to decrease due to human evolution because over time the human tongue has become fat and flat, which isn't suitable for speaking it. There are characters who weren't affected by this phenomenon yet, such as the primates, which are hominids with vestigial tails, and Lamet's grandfather who has fangs. Although they can speak a more ancient dialect of the language, Lamet, who eventually becomes the last living person to speak it, already has difficulties doing so. Christian characters, including the ones who grew up in the forest and converted later on in their life, constantly deny the existence of Snakish, even though they have seen its effect multiple times. The meaning behind this is up for interpretation, but for me, this language seems to be a metaphor for people's tie to their past. Throughout the story, we can witness the existence of various monstrous creatures passing into myth. One of the most notable ones is the Frog of the North, who could be commanded to destroy invading armies by thousands of masked Snakish speakers, but nowadays he only sleeps. Lamet also encounters a giant fish who is as big as a mountain, is terribly old, and has long grey whiskers. There's also an interesting character living on an island by himself who collects the skulls of intruders and uses their bones to obtain wings and learn to fly. He could be a reference to a character of Estonian mythology called Sareva, the solitary islander, the keeper of islands who likes remote places, communicates with plants, and can transform himself into a fox or an eagle. But unlike in the book, Sareva is a peaceful spirit who only gets angered by carelessness and rudeness. On the side of modernity, we can see elements of Christianity combined with elements of 13th century Estonian history. Christianity was brought to Estonia in the 13th century by the Order of Brothers of the German House of St. Mary in Jerusalem, a Catholic military order whose members are referred to as the Teutonic Knights. They served as a crusading military order for the protection of Christians in the Holy Land and the Baltics. Even today, you can find the ruins of castles of this order in Estonia Estonia, such as the Paide Castle or the ruins of the Viandi and Tarvastu castles. In the novel, the forest tribe do not consider knights as humans, often referring to them as Iron Man because of their armor. They are seen as a threat, especially because their armor protects them from attacks of snakes. On the other hand, the villagers actually idealize them. Young boys are made to believe that it is an honor when a knight wants to take them to his bed. Yikes. Similarly to that, even the priest thinks it was an honor that he was diddled by a religious figure in his childhood, which is all kinds of messed up.
Fight the real enemy!
Not to mention that women believe that sleeping with a knight produces a Jesus, which is why those who have been impregnated by knights are held in high regard. So basically, the novel exposes the immoral exploitation of the naivety and ignorance of these villagers by showing their poor and hardworking lifestyle compared to the privileged monks and knights. The narrator also points out the irrational actions of some monks, such as getting rid of certain body parts in order to sing in a higher voice. Although I have to point out that sometimes the intention of getting interested in religion isn't always the purest, as some young men in the book actually get into it in order to get female attention. Throughout the story, we see multiple characters abandoning the forest life and moving into the village. As they get detached from their past, they start to forget the meaning and importance of their old traditions, and then begin to develop misbeliefs about them. The author uses bread as a symbol of temptation, and every time the village priest tries to convert someone from the forest, he offers them bread. But the forest tribe only eats the meat of wild animals and of course wolf milk, and they consider bread to be disgusting and dangerous. Similarly to that, we can also see characters who remain in the forest but borrow elements from the village for fun, such as drinking wine. Now, given the biblical and religious significance of bread and wine, I think it was a genius idea to use it in this context. All in all, the main themes and the symbolism of this book is simply amazing, and the world building deserves a 10 out of 10 rating. It is usually hard to analyze the writing style when it comes to translated books, because there were instances where I read a book in my native language which completely stunned me, but reading the original work was quite overwhelming. Harry Potter. So the problem is, you never know if it's the merit of the original author or the translator. Either way, I feel like Christopher Mosley did a great job translating it. I found the prose of this novel to be quite enjoyable to read, and the slow pacing played a huge role in the continuous build of tension, which led to a satisfying yet harrowing climax. The first-person narrative, as well as the stunning sensory depictions, the detailed visuals, and of course the descriptions of sounds, smells, and tastes, allowed me to fully experience the story and get lost in its universe. There was quite a lot of focus on character emotions, desires, attachment, loneliness, fear, sorrow, and disdain, which helped me relate to the main character even more. Despite the fact that there's an overwhelmingly large number of characters, the slow pacing of their gradual introduction helps us in getting to know them and remember them one by one. The casual dialogues were believable, and each character had a unique voice. The book is filled with memorable lines such as, "Although we're heading in the same direction, we will never meet again. So great is the sea, and so tiny are we." There are also quite a few interesting contemplation on religion, such as, one person believes in sprites and visits a sacred grove, and another believes in Jesus and goes to the church. It's a matter of fashion. There's no use in getting involved with just one god. They are more like brooches or pearls, just for decoration, for hanging around your neck, or for playing with it. All in all, the prose is amazing and very enjoyable to read. If you want to read a great book that's outside of your comfort zone, I can honestly recommend this one. It has an engaging plot revolving around an important theme filled with interesting mythological, biblical, and historical references. The wording is beautiful, the pacing is perfect, plus the narration is playful and captivating. For me, this is almost a 5-star book, but it lacks one thing that I like to see in books, which is relatable female characters. Most female characters served as love interests or victims of peer seductions. They had no agency, they were mostly sucked in by their environment, and they were mostly used to highlight Lemet's relationship with the two cultures. So all in all, I'm gonna rate it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Now, this book actually got me interested in Estonian literature, which, for what I've researched so far, seems to be quite wicked. So I'm definitely adding books such as Walker on Water by Kristiina Ehi and The Misadventures of the New Satan, a novel by A.H. Tammsaare, to my TBR list. But enough about my opinion. Have you read this book, or are you you planning on reading it? Tell me in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. I'm trying to change the main theme of my channel and focus more on this general area, because I feel like there's not enough content on YouTube about our literature, history and culture. So if you're interested in those topics, make sure to subscribe and press that notification button. Thanks for tuning in and have a great day.
I will live,